All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. The game between the Texas RollerGirls and the Minnesota RollerGirls. I'm Rich Mahogany.
I'm October Revolution. And we are bringing to you this game between the number 8 ranked Minnesota RollerGirls and the number 4 ranked Texas RollerGirls. So should be quite a good time. I think we're going to run through the rosters first.
All right, here we go for Texas RollerGirls in white. We see number 03, Olivia Shootin' number 07, Jackie Daniels, number 100, Cece Boom, number 15, Trauma, number 16, Aja Gare, number 202, Freight Train, number 22, Polygon, number 27, Peace War, number 33, Gravy Baby, number 34, Bro Jackson, number 420, Stone Her, number 5, Smarty Pants, number 813, Bitter Cup, and number 9, Nikki Ticky Time Bomb.
And for the Minnesota RollerGirls MN All-Stars, we have number 1400, Shock Therapy, number 1837, Diamond Rough, number 28, Scarman Electra, number 3, Jacked Pipes, number 40, Crust Almighty, number 400, Brickyard, number 422, Polly Punchkin, number 5, Sherman P. Sampson, number 667, Shiver Me Kimbers, number 727, Hertrude Stein, number 8, Smokeahannes, number 82, Brutal Brit, number 84, Rhea Volt, and number 9, Secondhand Smoke.
So both of these teams have played once before at this weekend's Big O 2017. Texas, we saw facing down Denver, ranked number 7 yesterday, came out on top on a score of 195 to 162. And Minnesota faced off against Rat City, ranked 14 for WFTDA. Minnesota coming out on top of that matchup, 217 to 134.
And of course, these two teams have played each other twice at Champs in the past. In 2015, Texas beat Minnesota 185 to 173, and in 2011, Texas beat Minnesota 141 to 108. So Minnesota's very hungry for this one.
All right, and we are into the action. Taking a look at the jammers, we see Olivia Shootin' jamming for Texas RollerGirls, jamming against Brickyard for Minnesota.
Brickyard stepped 1 foot in before having to recycle there, so Brickyard gets lead jammer for that one.
Olivia Shootin' now through the pack, not lead jammer, but jammer in the lead, going to cause Brickyard to call off that jam before any points can be put up by either team.
Both these teams have played one game already this season, just to kind of before this weekend. Minnesota played Philly, won 251 to 92, and Texas played Dallas, won 277 to 66. So now you're all up to date on the 2017 race for the Hydra. Jamming for Texas, that's Nikki Ticky Time Bomb, and jamming for Minnesota, that is Jacked Pipes.
Jack Pipes initially looking for that outside open lane, not finding it. Nikki Ticky Time Bomb leaping over the defense, gets lead jam for Texas. So Jack Pipes still fighting away at the back of the pack, trying to force her way through, almost getting by that Texas defense, but it comes up and re-envelops her. Nikki Ticky Time Bomb through again for a grand slam.
During that exchange, Scarman Electra headed to the penalty box for a direction of play penalty. Only penalty so far. Oh, and Secondhand Smoke in the last jam had served a direction of play penalty as well.
Jack Pipes is performing a little bit of a star stash here. We'll see if she's going to pass that star, and there she goes, passing it off to the pivot. Hertrude Stein. Hertrude donning the jammer star. Ready to start scoring some points if Nikki Ticky Time Bomb will allow it, and no, she will not. She calls off the jam, picks up 4 points on that pass. That was a grand total of 9 points for that jam, bringing Texas up to 9. Minnesota currently scoreless.
Getting ready to jam now. Lined up on the jam line is going to be Freight Train, number 202 from Texas. And Brickyard is back for Minnesota, number 400. Brickyard jammed in the first jam, so far it's in every other. We'll see how that jam rotation forms up.
Brickyard trying to find the opening on the outside, doesn't quite find it. Great defense there by Texas. And then where we go, Freight Train taking advantage of that line of defense that Texas set up, does get through, takes lead jam for Texas. Brickyard now also out of the pack, looking to put on some pressure as Freight Train begins her scoring pass. Freight Train does get through the pack. We'll see if she did pick up that 4 points, did call off the jam before Minnesota could put any points up. So score now 13-0 in favor of Texas.
So far, Texas has had a much easier time getting out of the pack than Minnesota has. Even the one jam that they got lead, they weren't able to clear the engagement zone. But Minnesota has done a great job of getting their jammer out as soon as the Texas jammer is gone. So been able to kind of hold those scores low. 9, so that's 2 scoring passes. 4, that's 1 scoring pass. No huge jams quite yet. Jamming now for Minnesota is Shock Therapy, and jamming for Texas is Olivia Shootin'-John.
Oh, Shock Therapy almost getting out, but forced to the inside by number 27, Peace War for Texas. That is going to allow Olivia Shootin'-John an opportunity to get through and take another lead jam for Texas.
During that exchange, Rhea Volt was sent to the penalty box. Did not see what the call was. Isn't yet. Oh, it was a multiplayer block.
Meantime, Olivia Shootin'-John through for a grand slam for Texas. Shock Therapy not yet through the pack. She has removed that star cover. Olivia Shootin'-John around the pack. 5-point grand slam, Texas.
Penalty box is clear. Minnesota able to set up a strong tripod at the back here.
We do see the pivot now. Gertrude Stein for Minnesota pushing against that defense of Texas at the front. Something tells me she might have that star in hand, Tober.
I can see it.
Yep, there it is. She is now knocked to the inside, forced to recycle back by number 420, Stonehor for Texas. Olivia Shootin'-John through the pack. Grand slam, Texas.
So far, Minnesota is struggling here to kind of transition between defense and offense, and it's caused both the jammer to be able to get through quickly and also them not be able to get their jammer out, which I spoke too soon because there's Gertrude Stein clear of her initial pass.
Olivia Shootin'-John, though, well aware of the position of her opposing jammer, does call off the jam after picking up 4 points on that pass. That'll be a grand total of a 19-point jam for Texas, once again holding Minnesota scoreless.
It's going to bring the score to 32 for Texas, 0 for Minnesota. At the end of that jam, 2 Texas blockers were sent to the box. 1 on a forearm, that's Peace War. 1 on a low block, that's Bitter Cup. So this is going to give Minnesota a significant pack advantage going into this jam. Jammers are Jacked Pipes for Minnesota and Freight Train for Texas.
Jack Pipes out first, taking the first lead jam for Minnesota this game. And we see an early star pass. Freight Train passed her star over to Smarty Pants, who is now through the pack. Jack Pipe's going to get through, picks up 5 points, calls off the jam for a hit-it-and-quit-it jam.
Good work by Minnesota there, capitalizing on that pack advantage and then very quickly calling off that jam so that they can have a pack advantage once again. Those are the same 2 blockers in the box, so it took them less than 30 seconds to get 4 points, call it off, reset it, do it again. And here we go now, 32 for Texas, 4 for Minnesota. Our jammers going into this next jam are Brickyard for Minnesota and Nicky Ticky Time Bomb for Texas.
Nicky Ticky Time Bomb at the back of the pack, trying to play the lateral game. Not getting by, though. Brickyard through to take lead jam for Minnesota.
It's 2 in a row now for Minnesota.
Pack speeding up as Nicky Ticky Time Bomb is still in the pack. Brickyard through. That's 5 in the sky. Grand slam, Minnesota.
Both Brickyard and Jack Pipes for Minnesota work best at speed. So speeding these packs up actually, I think, is working to their benefit rather than to their detriment.
Nicky Ticky Time Bomb has passed her star over to Trauma, who has donned it. However, jam is called before any points can go up for Texas.
As far as a penalty box report, we've got 1 Texas blocker in the box. That's going to be Stoneher. Picked up a direction of play penalty during that jam. Score is now 9 for Minnesota All-Stars, 32 for Texas, and we've got 22 and a half minutes left in the game. In the half.
Half of the game.
Half of the game.
So we do see Olivia Shootin'-John wearing the jammer star for Texas, forced to the inside, recycles to the back of the pack. So she is out, takes lead jam for Texas. Jammer from Minnesota is number 1400, Shock Therapy.
Minnesota lost 2 blockers in that exchange. leaving that giant hole for Olivia Shootin'-John.
Olivia Shootin'-John taking well advantage of that. 5 points up in the sky for Texas. Shock Therapy still having some trouble getting out of that pack.
Penalty box is clear.
Texas with a strong brace there, keeping Shock Therapy back. Jeremy Kimbers does come out to let her out, but
this is a power jam. Shock Therapy sent to the penalty box on a forearm in between turns 1 and 2.
Oh, and that jam will be called off, icing the jammer in the penalty box. So that is a 10-point jam for Texas, bringing the score to 42 Texas, Minnesota 9. So as we mentioned, Shock Therapy going to the penalty box on that forearm penalty at the end of that jam. She will be jamming against Freight Train once she emerges from the penalty box, but that'll be about 30 seconds before she gets back on the track.
Minnesota getting strung out here, unable to hold Freight Train back. Lead jammer for Texas.
Sole blocker being held up at the back of the pack by Texas. Trying to do a little bit of work against Freight Train, but does not get an opportunity to. Well done, Freight Train, rolling off that hit by number 422, Polly Punchkin. That's 5 points for Texas.
Shock Therapy is now back in play.
Already having removed the star from coming out of the penalty box, we can anticipate a star pass over to the pivot, Gertrude Stein. That is if Texas's defense will let the two connect. Coming to a bit of a standstill at the second straightaway.
It's the first time we've really seen Minnesota been able to get a strong 4-person kind of like pod. I like to call it an amoeba of defense. They've been able to slow down or stop a Texas jammer. We haven't seen a ton of that, and this is buying them quite a bit of time here.
That pack still taking its time getting around turn 3. We see number 27 for Texas. That's Peace War going off on a penalty.
It was a direction of play penalty.
Freight Train now through the pack, picks up 4 points for Texas.
Shock Therapy has just handed the helmet cover off to Gertrude Stein, who's now your jammer for Minnesota.
Oh, Freight Train absorbs a nice hit, barely able to keep it inbounds, does go down to a knee, calls off the jam after picking up 2 points. That'll be 0 for Minnesota. Brings our score to Minnesota 9, Texas 53. We have 18 minutes and 55 seconds remaining to play in the first half.
Just one blocker in the box, as you mentioned earlier. It's Pace War. Minnesota did a better job of slowing down and stopping Freight Train there, but in order to close this gap, they're going to need to do that at the beginning of the jams before they lose the lead, take control back of the clock.
We see Gravy Baby wearing the star for Texas up against Jack Pipes for Minnesota. Both jammers getting knocked around a little bit. We got Gravy Baby recycled to the back of the pack. Now it is Jack Pipes' turn to go to the back. Minnesota's defense getting a little separated there, but then coming back together just in the nick of time to knock Gravy Baby out to the inside. There we go. Jack Pipes is your lead jammer for Minnesota.
There's 2 Minnesota blockers in the box right now. One of them is Secondhand Smoke, went on a back block. Other one is Diamond Rough, went on a forearm.
Gravy Baby through the pack on her way to make a scoring pass is going to cause Jack Pipes to call off the jam.
Shivermy Kimbers headed to the penalty box as well on a back block. In that exchange, it's going to leave Minnesota with just 2 blockers on the track. Not an enviable position for them to be in, as the most success they've had has been trapping the jammer, slowing the jammer down. You saw some of that in that last jam. And it's much harder to do that when there's only 2 of you.
Well, we'll see what our teams have for us this next jam. Nicky Ticky Time Bomb wearing the jammer star for Texas. Out for Minnesota is number 400, Brickyard. Lead jam, Minnesota.
And it's a power jam for Minnesota. Brickyard just hopped over the inside line. Didn't matter. She only had 2 blockers to help her. And then Texas picked up a forearm, giving Brickyard all the time in the world, or 30 seconds.
Oh, and in a jam of roller derby, 30 seconds can certainly seem like all the time in the world. We're going to see what Brickyard and the Minnesota All-Stars can do with that.
It looked like Nikki Tiki Time Bomb took off from the penalty box early, but then came back. I'm not sure if they're going to award any extra time for that or if it was an honest mistake or an NSO mistake, so keep an eye on that.
Brickyard through, Grand Slam, Minnesota.
Up there's the second penalty, so yeah, it does seem like this will be a full minute power jam for Minnesota, most of which is gone now, but...
Oh, definitely a nice whip there, just grabbing the back of her teammate's jersey, coming around the outside. Brickyard, Grand Slam for Minnesota.
Secondhand Smoke, who was sent on another back block, standing in the penalty box, heads back again. Nikki Tiki Time Bomb accidentally took off, but it looks like this time she didn't get a third penalty, so she's back in play.
So that is another Grand Slam up for Brickyard and the Minnesota All-Stars. As you said, Nikki Tiki Time Bomb back in effect, trying to push her way up against the front of the pack. Force to the inside. Minnesota defense coming together, bracing against each other in a four-wall. Nikki Tiki Time Bomb just getting low, trying to push her way through, breaking up that defense. Does get some help from Trauma. Passing the star over to Trauma, even in the process. Well played there. Trauma dons the star. However, jam called by Minnesota. Big jam for Minnesota, 19 points.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for from this jammer pool. They have at least 2, if not 3 jammers that can put up big numbers like that. You saw it last night. Jack Pipes doing it. Brickyard, like you saw right there, doing it. And I think, that's, while you can't really count them out of a game, even if they're in a great deficit, although 50 points isn't a great deficit. And so it was fun to watch. And she doesn't need a ton of blocking help to be able to do that, although it's super, super helpful, and you get a lot more points when all your blockers are on the track. So it was nice when the box cleared out.
So we do have an official timeout on the field. So that'll give us a moment to thank one of our sponsors. And pull up our sponsor. There we go. Rydell Skates. Shout out to Rydell Skates, proud sponsor of the Big O. Thank you very much to Rydell for keeping us rolling here at Big O 2014.
Something great to go with Rydell Skates or Radar Wheels. The Big O is also proudly sponsored by Radar Halo. Pick up a set of Halos today and see what you have been missing.
All right, so we still do have some of our officials conferring here. We will be getting you back to the action as soon as everything is sorted out here. I want to make sure we have all the numbers in the right places, all I's dotted, T's crossed, all that good stuff.
So it looks like so far we've had 10 jams. 10 jams. And of those 10 jams, 5 leads have gone to Minnesota, 5 leads have gone to Texas. So really what we're seeing is a higher point per jam average for Texas so far. Yeah, point per lead jam.
Minnesota really making a lot of their points in that last jam when Texas's jammer spent 2 turns in the box. That was Nikki Tiki Time Bomb.
What's really interesting is that so far in this game, we haven't seen a jam where both teams have scored points. So if one team scores, the other one doesn't. There's been one jam where neither team has scored points. But otherwise, if a team is scoring, the other team isn't. So jammer management has been really good. And the blockers' ability to get away has been really good.
All right, and we are back into the action, ladies and gentlemen. Gertrude Stein takes lead jam for Minnesota. She's jamming against Smarty Pants for Texas. Smarty Pants through the pack on her initial pass. But there we go. Gertrude Stein through for 4, going to call off the jam.
During that jam, Aja Gare went to the penalty box on a elbow. That was a great jump. We're already lined up again. Jamming now for Minnesota. That's going to be Jack Pipes. For Texas, that is Freight Train.
So Texas will be starting with one of their blockers, number 16, as you said, Aja Gare, starting in the penalty box. So slightly diminished pack strength for Texas. Jack Pipes on the outside, dancing on the toe stops, through for lead jam, Minnesota.
Yeah, we're seeing Minnesota really adjusting here, getting their feet underneath them. Able to start to pick up a little bit more of the lead jam percentage. The last 4 have been theirs.
Jack Pipe taking a lot of hits around turn 2. Does get through for a big old grand slam, Minnesota. Freight Train dealing with that defense at the back of the pack, trying to get a little bit of help of Aja Gare, who is now free of the penalty box. Oh, and a track cut penalty called on Trauma. Oh, and Trauma had been passed to the star there, so that'll be the jammer in the box for Texas. Power jam, jacked pipes, and Minnesota.
Jammer. Wait. Yes. Trauma took off the jammer helmet cover, then took off the pivot helmet cover, and then put the jammer one back on, so I was a little bit confused for a second.
So with that, Minnesota will call the jam, icing Trauma in the penalty box. That was a 10-point jam for Minnesota, bringing this to an 11-point game, ladies and gentlemen.
So in the last 4 jams, Minnesota has scored 36 points.
Quite the roaring comeback for Minnesota. Seems like they just kind of took a moment to get accustomed to the way Texas was playing, maybe wake up a little bit. This was their both teams' first game of the day. So we do have a team timeout called for by Texas.
Great moment to do that. I think that Texas now needs to adjust to Minnesota. I think, the last time these teams played, like I said earlier, they were very close. Look at the score up again. It was 185 Texas, 173 at Minnesota. So they were very evenly matched. Both teams have had some roster change-ups, but I don't think their skill level has been greatly diminished, and they're going to be kind of adjusting, and it's going to be those 1 and 2 points that decide this game.
So if you are one of those folks who are inclined to take advantage of social media to interact with all other roller derby fans checking out the Big O, you can check out live tweets at ECRG Twitter. You can also check them out at ECRG_the Big O. And of course, with any of your social media interactions, you can use that hashtag BigO2017 to tag the event and get in on the conversation.
Don't forget, if you're watching with your pets, there are hashtags for both cats and dogs.
All right, timeout has expired. We are back in the action. Brickyard, where's the jammer star for Minnesota up against Trauma for the Texas RollerGirls?
Trauma returns to the track from the box. Empty box. Everybody's on the track for roller derby.
Oh, yeah, it's a party on the track. Brickyard swinging back and forth. Does almost find that outside line. Taking a hit by number 5, Smarty Pants. That's going to allow Trauma just enough time to get through, but picks up a forearm penalty on the way. Back to the penalty box she goes. This will be a power jam for Brickyard and Minnesota.
This is the 4th jammer penalty that Texas has picked up so far. Remember, 2 of them were at the same time, so there was 1 minute and then 2 here. So that's 2 whole minutes of time that Minnesota has had to score unopposed.
Brickyard really stretching that pack out, pushes by some of the last vestiges of Texas defense. At the last moment, pushed to the inside, forced to recycle to the back of the pack. Good break up there by Diamond Ruff for Minnesota, trying to help out her teammate. However, that Texas defense really good at coming back together. They have burnt through enough time. Trauma is now back on the track.
Great penalty kill by Texas there. Definitely slowing this pack down, giving themselves some space for the star pass that just occurred. It's like a chain of star passes because Trauma had the star because of a star pass.
Well, hopefully we'll see now Smarty Pants donning the star. Wouldn't want to see her go into the penalty box at this point, or at any really, especially if you are a Texas fan. Getting to be a bit of a scrummy pack for a moment there around turn 3. That jam will come to a conclusion. Looks like only 3 points up on the board for Texas, 0 Minnesota. So Texas now spreading out their lead by just a bit. Got 14 points lead. Minnesota 42, Texas 56. Looking down to that jammer line, we see Brickyard wearing the star for Minnesota. She'll be jamming against Olivia Shooten-John for Texas.
Here's that tight, slow defense we expect from both these teams, giving both jammers quite a run for their money.
I do apologize. That is Shock Therapy jamming for Minnesota. Just one number difference, but that one number does make all the difference in the world. Olivia Shootin' through to take lead jam for Texas.
Pack still hasn't fully reached turn one. Very, very slow moving here. Minnesota trying to get together to slow down Olivia Shootin'.
Do see the pivot for Minnesota. Shiver Me Kimbers sent off to the penalty box for a high block call. Shock Therapy doing her best to push through that triple defense up at the front of the pack. Stone her up for Texas to bridge the pack. Meanwhile, at the back of the pack, seeing a similar situation for Olivia Shootin' dealing with Minnesota's defense.
Minnesota wasn't able to get together right away, but they were able to knock Olivia Shootin' out of bounds a couple times to give themselves time to get back together.
All right, and we have a star pass. Shiver Me Kimbers back on the track, receiving that star pass from Shock Therapy. Dons the star. Jam is called by Texas. That is a grand total of 5 points for Texas, holding Minnesota scoreless. Score Minnesota 42, Texas 61.
2 jams now. Texas has had a lead in a row. Been able to hold, not big jams, one was 3, one was 5, but able to kind of hold control of the game, hold control of the score, trying to change the momentum back as we move into the back half of this half.
All right, back into the action. Freight train through quickly for Texas. However, picks up a penalty there. That will allow Jack Pipes an opportunity to get through. Takes lead jam for Minnesota.
It's going to be the 4th jammer penalty. It's 2.5 minutes of power jam time Minnesota has had in this half.
Nice hit absorption there by Jack Pipes, just barely letting that critter off course. Quickly course correcting through for a grand slam, Minnesota. Oh, and doing it again, nigh untouched. Getting a little bit of a hit there from number 16, Aja Gare, but she does get through for another grand slam, Minnesota. Freight train now back on the track. She's now at the front, breaking up that tripod block of Minnesota. Does get through. That was her initial pass, so she will now work on scoring points. Jack Pipes gets the message from the bench, calls off the jam. She does get 3 points on that pass. That'll be a grand total of 13 up for Minnesota, closing up that score gap. Minnesota 55, Texas 61.
Minnesota has been able to really take advantage of these power jam situations they've been in. When they had 2 in 1 jam, they got 19 points. The last time there was one, they had 10 points. This time 13. So of their 55 points, that's almost 40 of them in power jams.
Oh, Brickyard through to take lead jam. Takes a little tumble, though. Is forced to recycle to the back of the pack. Don't want to draw out that track cut. Nikki Tiki Time Bomb jamming for Texas. Still trying to push through that defense of Minnesota. Oh, and Brickyard there. She does end up getting that track cut. Yep, no, I see that. So off she goes.
Okay, both jammers are sitting in the box now, but because Brickyard got 2 penalties. Wait, who got 2 penalties? Hold on.
So Brickyard is back on the track.
So Brickyard got 2 penalties there. Nikki Tiki Time Bomb only got 1, and Brickyard was released first. So I'm not 100% sure how that happened. Oh, no, they both got insubordinations. Okay, there's the second one. Both jammers got penalties. Both jammers got insubordinations. Brickyard got there first, so the insubordinations canceled each other out. Brickyard was released, and then Nikki Tiki Time Bomb was released.
So Nikki Tiki Time Bomb now on the track. Both teams at full strength. Of course, as they say that, a single blocker and the pivot for Texas off to the penalty box. Nice leap there. You've got, that is 4 up in the sky for Nikki Tiki Time Bomb and Texas.
Remember, this is going to be a 2-minute jam. I think you just said that because both jammers took a seat.
Nicky Ticky Time Bomb leaping by the last bit of Minnesota defense. 4 points up there. Oh, nice juke to the outside by Brickyard. Spinning. Does end up falling outside the track. Well done there by Texas defense.
Huge recycle by Secondhand Smoke. Going to slow Nicky Time Bomb down a little bit.
That will bring the jam to its natural conclusion. Looks like 8 points up for Minnesota, 12 Texas. Bringing our score to a 10-point game. Minnesota 63, Texas 73.
Fun fact, that was the first jam we've had so far where both teams scored points at the same time.
Wow, how exciting.
Yeah, so this has been a real who has control of the ball kind of game. But in that situation, they didn't really
that kind of went
have a chance.
Slightly out of control when you have both jammers going to the box at the same time, both getting insubordination calls. So perhaps unsurprisingly, we do now have an official timeout, going to get a few things sorted out on the track.
Getting a little bit of clarification from the officiating crew right now. We'll let you know in a second why they've taken a break.
I'd like to shout out to some of our volunteers here at Big O 2017 this weekend. Thank you to our photographers, all the photographers, for contributing their time and talent to shoot the Big O. Special shout out to Steve Sharky Mancini, who has organized this talented crew. You can go and check out the Big O Facebook page. I know we've already seen a number of photos up there. I want to make sure to follow all the photographers you see posting Big O pictures, as we'll have some awesome photography coming in throughout the weekend and in the weeks prior as they get their editing done.
All right, so they were confirming the penalty swap that we were a little bit confused about earlier. That it turns out that Brickyard had 2. Nicky Ticky Time Bomb only should have had the 1. They both served for 2 because one canceled out the other. So now Brickyard is going to start this jam in the penalty box.
So it sounds like there was a little bit of confusion there on the track. Olivia shooting John heard a whistle and was like, oh, it's time to go. But no, Olivia, I'm sorry, it is not yet time to go. Now we're at 5 seconds.
Was a not your whistle situation.
All right, so as we said, Olivia shooting John, where's the jammer star for Texas RollerGirls? Now she's through, takes lead jam. Looking towards the back of the pack, Brickyard jamming for Minnesota, not quite out yet. Olivia shooting John collides with the back of the pack, finds an open inside lane. She's through for a grand slam.
Brickyard is standing, but has taken the jammer helmet cover off her head. She's now back in play and invisible.
That was incredibly sneaky. She is through on that initial pass as she redons the jammer star cover.
She didn't get it back on in time to score points, but she didn't make the pack in time to score points either.
Well, she did force that call off. 3 points that pass for Texas. Grand total of 13 for the jam.
That's going to make the score 86 for Texas, 63 for Minnesota. So Texas is able to give themselves just a little bit of breathing room as we come to the end of this half. It's 3 minutes and 9 seconds before halftime.
Holy cow, where did that 30 minutes go?
It went to roller derby. I mean, now we've got Jack Pipes for Minnesota up against Gravy Baby for Texas.
Jack Pipes through to take lead, jam Minnesota. Gravy Baby pushing hard to get up to the front of the pack. And then we see the Minnesota defense there. That was number 727, Gertrude Stein, trying to hold her up. Not quite happening. Jack Pipes attempts an apex leap. Doesn't quite land it. Calls it off on her way back. That is going to be a 0-0 jam for these teams.
High risk, high reward for Jack Pipes. Wasn't able to land it, though, so all we lost was about 25 seconds on that one. Well, and the 30 ticked between.
Texas slowly starting to pull ahead here. See Minnesota at 63, Texas 86.
That was the second 0-0 jam we've had this game. The first one was the very first jam.
Shock Therapy wears the star for Minnesota in black. Wearing the star for Texas in white is Freight Train. getting things very, very tight in that pack. Not really moving up much farther than the pivot line yet. But Freight Train living up to her name, pushing that pack up. She takes lead jam for Texas.
You've seen Gertrude Stein taking kind of point on that last line of defense, chase through the 20 feet, and has been doing a good job of slowing down those blockers and giving some time for the Minnesota jammer to get out, but didn't work this time. Their jammer has just been lapped.
And we did see Shock Therapy dropping the helmet cover there and then sneakily just going and grabbing it from in between the legs of one of the Texas skaters.
Scrum Electra taking a seat for a direction of gameplay penalty.
Minnesota's defense really coming together to try to put a stop to Freight Train's forward momentum. They'll only be able to delay her for a little bit, though. That's a grand slam, Texas.
It's kind of a testament to how strong both these teams' defense is. It's that we've only had 2 jams in the entire out of 19 where there hasn't been any scoring, and the score is relatively low for a halftime like that.
Yeah, not seeing any huge jams yet. These defenses, like you said, really locking it down. And there we go, Shock Therapy trying to get through on the inside, taking a hit from number 5, Smarty Pants. Smarty Pants will pick up a penalty for her troubles, earning her 30 seconds to sit in the box and think about what she's done.
It's going to leave only 2 Texas blockers on the track. This is Shock Therapy's best chance of getting out of there. And there goes the star on Gertrude Stein's head once again.
Freight Train not content to stop yet. Does get by, pushing her hips through, calls off the jam. That's a 4-point pass.
It's going to be a 19-point jam for Texas. Texas has had 2 19-point jams. Minnesota has 1 19-point jam, and nobody's broken 20 yet.
So, of course, just as we're talking about not seeing a whole bunch of those biggins, we see some of the biggest we've seen yet. And, ladies and gentlemen, that'll bring us to the halftime. Stick around. We'll be back in just about 9 minutes.
Welcome back from halftime. This game you're watching is Texas RollerGirls Texecutioners against the Minnesota RollerGirls Min All-Stars. I'm October Revolution.
I am Rich Mahogany. Happy to be back here just seconds away from half 2 of this game getting back underway. Currently, Texas RollerGirls leading Minnesota All-Stars 105-63.
What's the story of this game? Well, if you look at penalties, 21 for Minnesota, 18 for Texas. It's almost even. If you look at lead jam, 9 for Minnesota, 8 for Texas. Almost even. It's hard to see kind of where the difference would be, or where the difference in points is. Well, Texas has been able to put up more double-digit points, so more multi-pass jams. But also it looks like when Minnesota has had a power jam, they've had kind of smaller differentials than when Texas has. Like, if you look at the scoring differential for Olivia Shooten-John, who's been lead 80% of the time and completely scored 47 completely unanswered points. Whereas you look at Shock Therapy, who has the 1 box trip, but also has a negative 64 differential and hasn't scored points yet. That's kind of where your story is.
Well, we're going to see if Minnesota can turn this around. Brickyard taking lead jam for this first jam, Minnesota. Going to see Olivia Shooten-John jamming for the Texas RollerGirls. That's a quick call off by Brickyard for Minnesota. Going to wait for confirmation on what we got for points. That's looking like a 0 up. No, that is 1 point up for Minnesota. 0 points for Texas. And we are quickly lining up for this next jam, seeing Jacked Pipes, number 3, jamming for Minnesota in black. She'll be jamming against Freight Train, number 202 for Texas in white.
That's a 5-on-5 game, and we have our cheering section for Minnesota.
Getting off to a rather slow start here, just scrumming away at the front of the pack. Jacked Pipes tries to break that Texas defense, is forced to the infield, recycled to the back of the pack.
If you could just see right at the front of the pack there, number 5 from Texas, that's Smarty Pants, able to kind of edge out the brace on Minnesota's defense. Texas has been doing a great job of doing that. Breaks holes open for their jammers, and then Minnesota's jammer isn't able to follow out past that.
Oh, so Freight Train out for lead jam, getting a flying leap apex jump landed, but not quite enough. That jam was called off early enough. Neither team scored points.
It was the most spectacular 0-0 jam I might have ever seen in all of roller derby.
That was an absolutely spectacular leap. And really, it's, I mean, like you said, like I'm happy with it living on in my heart as one of the best 0-0 jams I've ever seen.
It's truly, truly magnificent. 0-0 jam. Jamming now for Minnesota, that is Brickyard. For Texas, that is Olivia Shootin' John.
Olivia Shootin' John making it to the front of the pack. However, Brickyard sneaks through on the inside. Lead jam Minnesota. So Olivia Shootin' John is pushed to the outside. Picked up a track cut penalty. That will be a power jam for Brickyard and Minnesota.
Minnesota's gotten lucky on these power jams, able to help them kind of chip away at this differential. It's going to be 5 points for Brickyard.
Forearm penalty being assessed against Texas blocker Peace War. It's going to possibly make things a little easier for Brickyard to get through on this next pass. However, the remaining blockers for Texas bracing up against each other, but getting broken up by Shiver Me Kimbers there for Minnesota, allowing Brickyard through for a grand slam Minnesota.
This has been the perfect jam for Minnesota and a little bit of the perfect storm for Texas, although they look like they're able to get back together here, create their brace.
Oh.
That's a big recycle.
That was a great hit by Stoneher there on Brickyard, forcing her all the way through the infield, recycles her to the back of the pack. Referees barely dodging. Penalty box has now emptied. Both teams at full strength on the track.
We're in a full scrum. Looks like Olivia Shootin' John able to break out of it first.
Brickyard not going to waste any time calling off the jam. That is a 5-point pass for Minnesota, holding Texas scoreless. So that is a 15-point jam for Minnesota. Closing up that score gap, Minnesota 79, Texas 105.
And just to remind you again, the last time these two teams played was in 2015. Texas 185, Minnesota 173. So close games between these teams are not a rarity. Jamming now for Minnesota is Jack Pipes. For Texas, that's going to be Freight Train.
There we go. Jacked Pipes finds that open lane in the middle. Takes lead jam for Minnesota.
A little bit late on the bridge there for Texas, but it works to their advantage. Lets Freight Train go.
Jack Pipes forced to the outside. Does call off the jam. Waiting for confirmation on how many, if any, points the Minnesota Jam have picked up on that pass. Can confirm 0 for Texas.
So far, 3 of the 4 jams Minnesota has gotten lead this half. Remember, it was about even last half, 8 and 9.
So we confirmed that Minnesota did pick up 2 points on that last jam. Brings their score up to 81. Jam begins. Shock Therapy jamming for Minnesota in black. Jamming against Gravy Baby for Texas in white.
Shock Therapy having a bit of a hard time today against this Texas team. That'll continue.
Gravy Baby finds a wide open lane on the outside. Takes full advantage. Takes lead jam for Texas. Wow, and the pack hadn't moved forward very far at all. Gravy Baby takes advantage of that still open gap. Grand slam, Texas.
Minnesota having a hard time staying together here, leaving some spots open for Gravy Baby.
Oh, back block penalty being assessed against Gravy Baby. This will give Shock Therapy and the Minnesota All-Stars a power jam. Shock Therapy, though, still has yet to make her initial pass. Texas defense really locking down.
That'll make this a 2-minute jam.
So we see Diamond Ruff back there breaking things up for the Minnesota All-Stars. Shock Therapy passes her star over to Shiver Me Kimbers, the pivot, activating her jammer powers by donning that star.
Great move there. Shiver Me Kimbers, I mean, not entirely fresh, but fresher than Shock Therapy, who had been fighting almost 2 minutes, although
Back block apparently the penalty du jour for our jammers as Shiver Me Kimbers picks up a back block penalty. Right as Gravy Baby is now back on the track holding the jammer star. Dances along on the inside line through for a grand slam Texas.
Shiver Me Kimbers sat down when there was about 30 seconds left on the jam, so she should be released from the penalty box before this jam expires. So we will probably start next jam with both jammers.
We shall see. Texas now up to 15 points with that pass. And yes, lo and behold, Shiver Me Kimbers now back on the track just as the whistle is called for the jam ending. So that was a 15-point jam for Texas. Minnesota held scoreless. Score now, Minnesota 81, Texas 120.
I think that was the first time this half Texas had scored, but that was a big, big jam to have for that. Minnesota able to put 18 points up on the half, but in one jam that was erased.
Oh, Freight Train takes lead jam for Texas, running up that inside line. She'll be jamming against Gertrude Stein for Minnesota. Gertrude Stein still stuck against a try block for Texas. Freight Train taking advantage of some of that confusion, runs up the outside. Grand slam, Texas.
Texas is doing a wonderful job here of breaking Minnesota apart. They're having a very hard time trying to stay together. They recycled to the back to do it, and there we go.
Yep, so that Minnesota defense really now coming together to put a stop to Freight Train's forward momentum. Gertrude Stein slowly chipping away at the defense of Texas at the front of the pack. Pack slowly stretching out. Only 2 blockers remain holding her back. She will get through. Eligible now to begin scoring points. Freight Train, though, through on the inside. Calls off the jam. Picks up 4 points on that pass.
Polly Munchkin head sent to the penalty box for a blocking with the head during that exchange. Score now 81, Minnesota 129 for Texas. Second multiple pass scoring jam in a row for Texas. They've put 24 points up in this half.
Shout out here to our wonderful sponsor, Left Turn Clothing, uniforms that move with you. Get back down to the action on the track. Jacked Pipes wears the jammer star for Minnesota. She will be jamming against Gravy Baby for Texas. Jacked Pipes gets by the pivot. Olivia Shootin' takes lead jam for Minnesota. Gravy Baby, though, quickly out of the pack, shortly behind her. See Jacked Pipes turning around, skating backwards on 1 foot, calls off the jam, only picks up a single point for her troubles, but does hold Texas down to 0 for that jam. So our score now, Minnesota 82, Texas 129.
If you're on the internet and you're seeing pictures posted by all the wonderful photographers here, don't forget to thank them for contributing their time and talent to shoot this, the Big O. And a special shout out to Steve Sharky Mancini, who has organized this talented crew. Thank you for photogs. Jamming now for Minnesota, that is Brickyard. For Texas, it's going to be Freight Train up against the Trapad in the front.
Do have a multiplayer block assessed against number 28, Scareman Electra for Minnesota. This will allow Freight Train through to get lead jam. Freight Train through again for a grand slam, Texas. Brickyard in the meantime through the pack, looking to make her scoring pass. Both jammers approaching the pack.
Good German awareness by Freight Train, calls that off. 0-0 pass, 5-0 jam. Timeout called now by Minnesota.
Smart move there by Minnesota in that last jam, really keeping that pack moving. denying Freight Train those points.
You know, we were talking during the half, and I think we've been talking a little bit during this game about how Minnesota has been struggling with how Texas has been breaking up their tripods and their defense. Texas kind of does it by using their upper thigh and lower torso to wedge themselves in between and push back on the brace inside the tripod, and it kind of collapses them apart.
Not really. Okay, I'll try.
Minnesota's fan section is cheering and singing us on. There's Sears.
Another shout out here to our sponsor, Mota Skates. Mota Skates, react quicker, fly higher, last longer. Mota Skates.
Amazing. I was trying out my own cheering section. Oh, wait, I have one. It's all my lives. It's the corner.
All right, it looks like that timeout is ending.
That's right. All right.
5 seconds called for. We are ready to get back into the action. We see Jacked Pipes wearing the Jammer Star for Minnesota. She'll be jamming against Olivia Shootin' for Texas.
Big reset here. Going to give a lot of time to the Texas Jammer. Jackpipe tries to take to the air.
Jacked Pipes jukes to the inside, finds the open lane, gets lead jam for Minnesota.
Misconduct called on Stoneher in that exchange with the jump earlier. Doesn't seem pleased about it.
We do see a star pass on the track. Olivia Shootin' passes her star over to Trauma. Gonna incite Jacked Pipes to call off the jam. 4 points up for Jacked Pipes. 1 point Texas.
Brings the score now Minnesota 86, Texas 135. We've got 17 minutes and 56 seconds left in this game.
Shout out to another one of our amazing sponsors here for Big O 2017, Fingers Duke. Thank you very much to Fingers Duke for sponsoring the Big O.
Teeny tiny official timeout. That was less than 2 seconds.
Well, just need a moment to get things clarified. We are ready to get back into the action. Brickyard wearing the star for Minnesota in black, up against Freight Train for Texas in white.
Freight Train breaks through the middle of that scrum. Picks up lead jammer for Texas.
Brickyard close on her heels, though. Both jammers really picking up speed now that they're out of the pack. Freight Train barrels into the center of the pack, calls off the jam as quickly as she can, gets 2 points, holds Minnesota scoreless. That will bring our score to Minnesota 86, Texas 137.
Almost a stalemate so far in this half. We've had 21 points scored by Texas. 22 points scored by Minnesota. So we'd be almost a tied game if the first half hadn't happened.
Well, the first half most certainly did happen. We're going to see what shock therapy can bring for Minnesota. Takes on Gravy Baby. Gravy Baby out first to take lead jam, but quickly knocked to the outside, recycled to the back of the pack.
Secondhand Smoke was able to use that same thing I was talking about earlier with the upper thigh, lower body to kind of push somebody out. You can almost use your body to torque or direct someone's feet. So you gotta be really careful not to get your knee involved.
So I'm hearing that we are now seeing defensive twerking.
I think it's defensive twerking.
All right, Gravy Baby pushing by the last bit of defense there. Secondhand Smoke for Minnesota. She takes lead jam for Texas.
Getting tiny on the outside. 5 points for Gravy Baby.
Shock Therapy at the back of the pack, working on pushing away, but that Texas defense not giving more than an inch at a time. Meanwhile, Gravy Baby taking far more than an inch at a time, up for a grand slam, Texas.
It's been a real hard game for Shock Therapy so far today. She's really had some trouble. You know, she's got the lowest differential, if you're looking at that kind of set, at 89. Jammed 7 times, never had lead, never scored points, and has been to the box. I'm not sure if I was the Minnesota coach that I would keep handing the star to her.
Well, she did just attempt a star pass, complete a star pass over to her pivot.
Yeah, Gertrude Stein has had the star on her helmet a lot more than I've ever seen in the past. They're kind of relying on her to pick up that spot to try and help Shock Therapy out. But now, you know, after that jam, it's a negative 93 differential. That's a big deal. 93 of Texas' 151 points have been scored against Shock Therapy.
Well, getting back into the action on the track, Olivia Shooten-John wears the star for Texas, gets the lead jam. She is jamming against her number counterpart. You have 0-3 versus 3 jacked pipes. Oh, so it looks like Olivia Shooten-John did pick up a penalty, a back block penalty. That will shift things over to Minnesota. So Minnesota now with a power jam. Minnesota also down a single blocker here. Jack Pipes not yet able to break free of the pack. And there we go. Jack Pipes is now through. That is a grand slam up for Minnesota. Of course, most of that penalty time burnt away for Olivia Shooten-John. Now back on the track. Jacked Pipe recycled to the back of the pack. Olivia Shooten-John now pressing up that brace Triforce of power at the front of the pack by Minnesota. Number 84, Rhea Volt, is called out on a penalty, so I believe that was a multiplayer block. Olivia Shooten-John through for 4 points. Olivia Shooten-John through for 4 more points, hurrying around that track. Only 2 blockers in her way at the front of this pack. Getting a little bit of help there from number 27 for Texas. That is Peace War.
That's Diamond Ruff and Polly Punchkin up at the front, holding Olivia Shooten-John. Polly Punchkin able to grab a little bit of extra space, a little bit of extra time.
Well, and with the end of that jam, 4 points up for Texas, 4 more for Minnesota. Looks like 9 points total that jam for Minnesota, 13 Texas.
That's the second time in the entire game that both teams have scored points, and both times it's been 2-minute jams. That's unbelievable as far as this goes. And I think, you know, both teams have had jammers that are normally great jammers and then be stymied. The difference is when Nikki Tiki Time Bomb started having a hard time, got a negative differential, Texas stopped jamming her, and Minnesota hasn't stopped jamming Shock Therapy.
We have Freight Train now taking lead jam for Texas. She is followed closely by Brickyard. We see Minnesota really driving that pack speed up very quick. So that jam will be forced for a call off. 1 point Texas, as we have a timeout being called for by Minnesota. Really a wise use of timeout, as we are at 165 Texas, 95 Minnesota. We see the clock stopped at 11 minutes and 37 seconds.
Yeah, both times Minnesota has played Texas, they've lost, but both times it's been a closer game than we're seeing here. So especially considering they're rising in the rankings right now, you know, they came up 2 in this last set of rankings. They're only 4 beneath Texas. They really want to figure something out here to kind of close up this gap. And I think it's an adjustment game. Texas has been able to adjust and break apart their blocker walls. Texas has been able to adjust and kind of change their jammer lineup, who's jamming, who isn't. And Minnesota hasn't been able to adjust quite as quickly.
Well, we'll see what Minnesota ends up bringing to the table after conferring with their team here. Does give us a quick moment to shout out to our sponsor, S1 Helmets. The S1 Lifer Helmet. It equals best fit plus best protection, which equals made for roller derby. Get a lifer, be a lifer.
I thought you were going to say it equals life, because it does. Don't break your head. Just a shout out to Bruise Skate News. Not sure where to get your favorite skater with over 70 colors and patterns to choose from. There's something for everyone.
Getting back down to the action on the track. Timeout has wrapped up. Gravy Baby jamming for Texas. Taking lead jam coming around turn 1. She'll be jamming against Gertrude Stein for Minnesota. Gravy Baby with a quick round around the track. Leap in the apex. That's a grand slam, Texas. Gertrude Stein almost through. Does get by the Texas defense. Dodges a late hit there by number 16. That is Aja Gare. Aja Gare, a recent addition to the Texas RollerGirls lineup. Definitely seems to be putting in quite a good deal of work today.
Now, if you watched Minnesota over the last playoff season, you would see that really their weakness that's being showcased in this game is the depth of their jammer pool. You know, they've got Jack Pipes. They've got Brickyard. They need a third jammer for their rotation. Last year they tried Sherman P. Sampson, had some trouble. This year they're trying Shock Therapy, having some trouble. Gertrude Stein's having some trouble. So their jammer depth is really holding them back in these situations.
Well, we now see Jacked Pipes wearing the jammer star for Minnesota, pushing away at the front of the pack. Just 2 blockers to keep her back. But no longer, as Stoneher picks up a multiplayer block penalty. Jacked Pipes through. Lead jam Minnesota. So she is jamming against Freight Train for Texas. Freight Train still having a little bit of trouble getting through the pack. Recycled to the back. That's a grand slam up for Jacked Pipes. So Freight Train again recycled to the inside. Jacked Pipes taking a bit of a hit there by number 22 for Texas. That is Polly Gone. Oh, Polly recycling her all the way to the back of the pack down into turn 4. So we do have a star pass. Freight Train passes her star over to the pivot. Trauma. But Trauma cutting the track. Going to go to the penalty box. This is a great opportunity for Minnesota to make a comeback. Minnesota, though, Jacked Pipes knocked to the outside, recycled to the back. Texas defense really going to town on Jacked Pipes. Jack going to call off the jam, freezing Texas RollerGirls jammer. Oh, yeah, we had the penalty box there.
The last time Trauma was handed the star and got a penalty and was the jammer in the box, Minnesota froze her there. And it worked out well for them. She got a second penalty in the next jam. So they're going to try it again. So here we go. And Trauma had paused, thought she had made that pass legally, but had stepped out of bounds.
So we see Brickyard wearing the jammer star for Minnesota. Does get through, takes lead jam. As we said, Trauma jammer for Texas RollerGirls is in the penalty box, about to come out. We see Olivia Shootin' wearing the pivot cover for Texas. And the Minnesota defense really working on keeping Olivia Shootin' back, anticipating that star pass as Trauma re-enters the track. In the meantime, 5-point grand slam up for Brickyard. Trauma is now through on her initial pass. Likewise, Brickyard through for 4 points, calls off the jam. With that jam, Minnesota will break the century mark, now at 114 to Texas's 173.
2 very needed jams for Minnesota to stay in the game somewhat, though they are still a little bit behind.
So the clock definitely not becoming Minnesota's friends at this point. We have 7 minutes and 30 seconds remaining to play. Shock Therapy up to jam for Minnesota. Gravy Baby, her opponent on the Texas side. And the penalty box has now emptied. Both teams at full strength.
It's going to be Sherman B. Sampson headed to the penalty box for Minnesota.
lot of jammer recycling happening in this jam. Oh, Gravy Baby just barely pushed to the outside by pivot Rhea Volt on the side of Minnesota. Once again, like each jammer just consistently, as soon as they're getting just a little bit of daylight, forced out and going to recycle back. We see Shock Therapy, see if she can get by these last bit of Texas defenders.
Yeah, Texas does such a great job of holding back Minnesota's jammers, even when there's only 2 blockers. And their jammers do such a good job of pushing against Minnesota's blocking team that Minnesota can't spare a blocker to go for their jammer.
Yeah, definitely a great job by Smarty Pants and CC Boom, keeping Shock Therapy back long enough to allow Gravy Baby the chance to get through and take lead jam. And with that pass, we have a Grand Slam Texas.
Shock Therapy is in the penalty box as a jammer.
So
even though the jammer helmet cover is in the hand of the Minnesota pivot.
No, and that jam will get called off. See there, a 10-point jam for Texas, holding Minnesota scoreless. So that helmet cover has been passed back over for the Minnesota jammer. She is standing in the box, so she will be back in the action in short order. But for now, Shock Therapy starting in the box, going up against Freight Train.
We're going to try to burn some of that time. We're starting up here at the pivot line. It's like a quarter of a second they get.
A little bit of a tumble to the inside. Going to let Freight Train get up to the front of the pack. Just a nice turn around the Minnesota defense. Takes lead jam for Texas. Freight Train coming back around, trying to get around the outside. Met with some fierce Minnesota defense. Well done there by Second Hand Smoke and Diamond Rough, locking her down. In the meantime, Shock Therapy back on the track. Oh, that was a star pass over to Gertrude Stein. So Gertrude getting that jammer cover on, but the jam is called before she can get any points. 3 points up that pass for Texas, and that would be 3 for the jam.
Gertrude Stein's been accepting the star quite a bit today. Does a good job at being exactly where she's needed, exactly when she's needed, with an open hand and an open heart for jamming.
I will accept the jammer star into my life, and lo, it shall lead me.
Good captaining skills, I think. Are you having some trouble? Let me jam for you.
All right, getting back down to the action on the track. Gravy Baby, where's the star for Texas? Jacked pipes, though, through for lead jam Minnesota. So Pack once again picking up a great deal of speed. Gravy Baby now getting through. Will be working on making her scoring pass. Jacked pipes through for 4 points. Calls off the jam. Not wanting to take that risk of Texas getting any additional points up on the board as the clock ticks down.
So far in this half, Minnesota has had 8 lead jams and Texas has had 9 lead jams. So pretty evenly to the first half. They've had control over the track.
All right, Brickyard wears the star for Minnesota. Jams against Olivia Shootin' for Texas. Both jammers getting recycled out, pushed to the infield. Brickyard almost making it to the front, but takes a tumble, push to the inside. That'll give Olivia Shootin' position up at the front of the pack. Minnesota originally had that braced 4-wall, had to break one off. Oh, great job there by Jackie Daniels for Texas, breaking up that triple brace. They are still holding Olivia Shootin', but only barely. There she goes, lead jam Texas.
Second that whistle blew, Brickyard took that helmet cover off her head, but she was able to get through before she could find a pivot, so now she's just completed her initial pass.
All right, so we do see a forearm being called on Olivia Shootin'. That'll be a power jam for Brickyard and Minnesota. Brickyard through for a grand slam.
51 seconds left in this jam. It'll be a 2-minute jam.
So Diamond Rough blocker for Minnesota just released from the penalty box. Minnesota now at full strength. So that's it. With that pass, we've got 5 points. And we see Brutal Brit taking a knee in the center of the track, possibly having a skate malfunction, doesn't want to get out there and be a danger.
Secondhand Smoke just received an illegal procedure and was sent to the penalty box. I didn't see what it was. It's a strange call for when there's no jammer in the box and you're not coming out of the box. Maybe she popped her mouth guard?
All right, so we do have Brickyard through for another grand slam up for Minnesota. Olivia Shooten-John back on the track, through for 4 on that pass. As you said, this jam will go the full 2 minutes, which has just ended.
Best case scenario for Minnesota there, because Olivia Shooten-John had scored those 4 points before she went into the box. So they weren't new points, and it bought time for the jam to expire. And they got 11 points out of that.
So we did see Brutal Brit kind of skating off, pushing off on one skate. Not sure if, hopefully everything's all right and it's just a broken skate, but we will get back into the action. Jacked Pipes wearing the Jammer star for Minnesota.
It's Freight Train for Texas.
Oh, big hit there by Jacked Pipes, breaking up the Texas Roller Girl defense, but she does take a little bit of a spill for it. Freight Train up at the front of the pack, pushing against a braced triple block for Minnesota. But she does get around, takes lead jam for Texas. But sneaks in on the inside, is forced to recycle back into the warm, loving embrace of the Minnesota blockers.
This is a win for Texas because all this time the Freight Train has control over the jam and is stuck. It's time taken away that Minnesota can't be scoring. So Jack Pipes needed to get free in order to try and force a call-off if she can here.
Well, and we do have, we are now on the jam clock as the period clock has expired. Jacked Pipes through the pack. And Freight Train's going to call off the jam. That will bring the game to a close. So that was 2 points on that last pass for that, and in 2 points, in fact, for that entire jam for Texas, holding Minnesota to 0.
It's a big win for Texas.
Yes, indeed. And as you said, like a lot of the times we've seen Texas, Texas and Minnesota play, they do. Texas comes out on top, but a bit of a closer match than we saw tonight.
Yeah, you know, this unofficial final score that we're looking at right now is 192 for Texas, 133 for Minnesota.
And there's the whistle making it the official final, I believe.
I really think this was a story of adjustments. Texas was able to adjust. They adjusted who they played. They adjusted how they played. And in the end, were able to kind of keep on top, keep that 60 or so points that they built up in the first half and hold on to it through the second half.
Yeah, definitely a great job by Texas maintaining that lead that they built up in the first half. Minnesota just struggled to put up the big kinds of jams they needed to be able to make up that score deficit in the second half.
You know, just kind of recognize high-scoring jammers. You got Brickyard with 72 points for Minnesota, highest-scoring jammer of the game. And then Olivia Shooten-John picked up 65 for Texas, the highest-scoring jammer for them. Freight Train got 57. Gravy Baby got 47. And then 57 for Jack Pipes.
All right, so that will about do it for us here on track one for this game between Minnesota and Texas.
Don't forget, next on this track is Rose versus Denver. You won't want to miss that one. Make sure you can see Scald Eagle play against her friends. And I've been October Revolution.
I have been Rich Mahogany. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Big O 2017. We hope you stick around and continue enjoying this marvelous weekend of roller derby.
Hey there, welcome back. I'm Ophelia Mellons at the Big O 2017 with an Afterglow interview. Joining me today, the wonderful captains of Prime City Rollers. Ladies, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, hi, I'm Curly.
I'm Mina, also known as Below Me.
It's below me. And well, welcome to Oregon, welcome to the Big O. You guys have crushed it so far. Does that feel awesome?
Yeah.
Just to put it into
Lovely.
perspective, in 2 games so far, they've scored like, I don't know, 7,000 points. No, like over 700 points, and people have only scored on them about 120 points in those 2 games.
We're pretty happy about
Yeah.
that.
So they took down Sydney on yesterday, Friday, and you took down Terminal today. Tonight you're going to be playing my alum, Rat City Rollers, at 8:30 on track 2. How are you preparing for that? Are you ready? Are you excited?
We're super excited.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be super tough game. Yeah. So
Yeah. You're ranked 18. I think right now they're ranked 14.
We're ranked 12.
12. Oh, you
Yeah.
guys just jumped up. Let me excuse me. They're ranked 12. That's kind of a big deal. Congratulations. And coming to tournaments like this is certainly a big part of climbing the rankings. You also get to play arch rival tomorrow. That'll be a huge challenge as well. How do you figure out the means to get to tournaments like these, or how do you choose which American tournament you want to go to?
This one, it was actually because I couldn't get off work any other tournament.
So it was convenient.
Yeah.
Seasonal. We have a lot
Yeah.
of teachers in our team,
Yeah.
and they can't really get off at any time. So
What time of year is it like right now where you're able to take vacation?
Like, it's really hard
Okay,
right now.
yeah.
But I managed. So.
All right. Well, that's great. You know, I love the Big O tournament. I've been here as a skater, an announcer, a coach. It's awesome, right? Like, everybody's happy. They try to take care of everything.
it's by far the best tournament we have been on.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's lovely.
Well, by far until September 8th through 10th.
Yes.
Well, that would be the best one.
So Crime City is going to be hosting a Division 1 playoff in Malmo, Sweden this September, and that's the first European playoff. You spoke with Double H at E-Rock
Yes.
a little bit about how exciting that is and how important it is for Europeans to get to see like high-class world elite derby in person. And I looked up a fun fact about Malmo. Women are allowed to, by the city council, to swim topless in public pools.
Yeah.
So that kind of like comes back to the hashtag for playoffs. What is that hashtag?
It's roller derby, falafel, and nudity.
That's what you have to look forward to at Sweden's playoffs in September. So that's really exciting. Any culture shock coming to visit America?
Yes, we actually talked about
Yeah.
this. You can say.
We were so fascinated about that. Everyone is like in the stores or whatever you meet are like asking like, how are you doing? How are you doing?
Oh, we're chatty.
Yeah,
Very
and when you
chatty.
realize that you're not really into an answer and you have like told them your whole problem and they are like, yeah.
Yeah, they
So
ask
that
you,
is-
how are you? And you're like, oh, I'm fine actually. How are you?
It's not just like
common.
good. Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
I definitely.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying there.
And also people are super like nice.
That's
nice,
incredible
nice.
considering our political climate. That's good. I'm glad you feel that we're nice people.
Yeah, but we're here in like Oregon.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's
You're in a
super nice.
bubble here, aren't
Yes.
you? I noticed your shirts. Do you want to tell us about Crime
Yeah.
City wearing those?
Yeah, it's since the situation and Mina has a double citizenship, so she's half Swedish, half Iranian, and
I was almost not able to come here because of the Trump ban.
Yeah.
yeah,
And after that, it was all these discussions going on, and then we decided that we were gonna warm up in these shirts and also sell them here at this tournament, and all the money goes to refugees.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I know Sweden's really big in helping the Syrian refugees, especially. So that's really cool. And another reason why it's important for roller derby to go overseas to get more exposure to things like that. Coming up later today, you have your Rat City game at 8:30. But later today is the Rose City Denver game. It's probably happening at the same time, right? So you don't get to see it.
And we don't get to get any audience.
Everyone's gonna go back and watch it.
No, but they're before us, aren't they?
Are they at like
earlier,
6?
or- yeah.
Well, you have any like predictions, any thoughts on how that's gonna happen? I mean, there's a lot of skaters, transferred and whatnot.
Oh,
Victoria, Denver. I think Victoria.
Or no, we're
No,
Rose,
Rose.
Denver.
Oh, Rose then.
Yeah.
I also
still think
I also
Victoria.
think Rose will win.
You know
but
what?
It will be a
Victoria
really
will probably win the Rose Denver game.
Yeah.
You heard it here from Crime City. How many people do you have with you on this trip out here?
We're actually 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
17 with a bench.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
No, we're 16. We don't have a lineup.
You
we
don't
don't
need
have-
one of those.
I was supposed to be the lineup,
Yeah.
but then I found out I could play.
Okay.
Instead.
Any shout outs or anything you want to say to your friends and fans at home?
We're on social media, we see them cheering at us and just having these conversations about us, and we really appreciate that. It
Yeah.
really feels wonderful that so many people are staying up all night because
Yeah.
of the time difference.
They're
and
like, what
still
time is
watching
it
us.
in Sweden right
Sending
now?
5
love
a.m.
and cheering. And, yeah.
Is it like 3 days from now in the
No,
evening?
9 hours ahead. 3 days ahead.
Thank you, below me and Captain Curly. You gotta let me, give me a second. Thank you so much for being here. You can get your merchandise from you guys. You can get these great refugee shirts, and all proceeds will go to an excellent cause. Thank you so much for being here. Good luck in your game with Rat City.
Thank you very much.
That's all for the Afterglow for now. Join me later, and we will talk to Wilhelm and S.H. Long of the Denver Roller Derby.
Så du kollar bara in i gång.